A Tales game so bad it led to the series producer resigning in shame? Is Tales of Zestiria really that bad? I remember this game was being ripped to shreds in online discourse back when I got into the Tales series in late 2015. However, I feel like the hatred surrounding this game has died down in the 8 years since it first came out, with a lot of people now praising this game. Is this game a misunderstood masterpiece, or was the 2015 fanbase justified in calling for Hideo Baba's head? Let's find out as I look back on 2015's Tales of Zestiria for the PlayStation 4. Now just a reminder that this Tales of Zestiria retrospective was brought to you by my lovely patrons Cameron Strauss, Black Liquid SRW and Echolocation. For as little as $3 a month you can get your name shouted out at the start of every Xenosanctum video, as well as access to bonus behind the scenes content, link in the description below. Following the release of Tales of Xillia 2, the now integrated team at Bandai Namco was ready to move on from the Xillia universe. The initial development for what would become the next Tales game would begin in late 2011, during the development of Xillia 2. With 2015 being the series' 20th anniversary, the team would once again aim to have this game be an anniversary title like the previous Tales of Xillia 1. However, this time the team would have the benefit of an additional year to develop the game. Despite 8th gen consoles coming onto the market, the team at Bandai Namco would choose to develop this game for the almost 10-year-old PlayStation 3. This move was in part driven by the low sales of the Wii U and PlayStation 4 in Japan, with the team worried that the small install base of these consoles would not yield large enough sales. Despite not moving on to new hardware, the team still decided to push the series' visuals to new heights. This would involve drastically improving the designs of the characters and in-game objects, while at the same time expanding the size of towns and field maps to give the player more of an open world feeling and exploration. Along with increasing the size of the world, the team also wanted to bring the series back to its fantasy roots, after the Xillia games had seen the Tales series gone off in a more sci-fi direction. Thus, main scenario writer Naoki Yamamoto would look towards the series' classic entries like Fantasia and Eternia when writing the plot in order to get the medieval fantasy setting. The story Yamamoto would develop would choose to focus on the spiritual relationship between humans and spirit-like beings called Seraphim. This story would follow a very classic plot surrounding an impassioned hero who would use the power of the Seraphim to cleanse the world of malevolence in order to bring peace to the land. With the game being about a zesty hero, the team settled on the name of Tales of Zestiria and the characteristic genre of an RPG of a passion lighting the world. Designing this hero and his entourage of Seraphim would be the designing trio of Kosuke Fujishima, Mutsumi Inamata and Daigo Okamura. When it came to designing the Seraphim characters, extra care was taken to make them look more ethereal. This involved giving the Seraphim characters bright and colourful outfits in comparison to the more muted outfits of the human characters. Seraphim characters were also seen wearing ornate robes and dresses in comparison to the more practical workwear of the human characters. Tales of Zestiria would be unveiled over a year prior to its eventual release in late 2013. Over the course of 2014, more details would be unveiled to the public, alongside several promotional tie-ins, from a Zestiria-themed DualShock 3 to Zestiria-themed clothing and jewellery. Bandai Namco would also give PlayStation Network subscribers quite a sizable discount on the game at launch in order to encourage players to pick up the game. By the end of 2014, the game's Japanese release date of the 22nd of January 2015 would be announced. Bandai Namco wouldn't only market the game heavily in Japan. After the two previous Xillia games had seen long drawn out localizations, Bandai Namco was very much keen to see Tales of Zestiria released worldwide within the 2015 launch year. Despite being created exclusively as a PlayStation 3 title, by 2015 most Western fans had moved on to the PlayStation 4, thus during localization Bandai Namco would quickly port the game over to the PlayStation 4 in order to release it alongside the PS3 version. The PS4 version would not be the only platform to receive the game in the West. Due to the large increase in PC gaming, a port for Steam would also be developed. As a result of this, Bandai Namco had inadvertently turned Tales of Zestiria into the first day one multi-platform Tales title. With Bandai Namco going all out promoting this game, could Tales of Zestiria live up to the hype? The story begins within some mountain ruins where we meet our protagonist Soray. Wait, it's just Soray? Since when have Tales protagonists not had last names? Anyway, Soray is exploring the ruins and comparing the murals he sees with those in his copy of the Celestial Record, an ancient book which depicts the discoveries made by an ancient hero called the Shepherd. Soray soon runs into his Seraphim friend Mikleo, thus giving birth to every teenage girl's ultimate bromance. Suddenly storm clouds begin to form around the ruins, causing the two to flee for cover. In the process of fleeing for cover, the two fall into a pit and discover the ruins continue underground. The two decide to explore the ruins in order to find a way out when they suddenly discover an unconscious lady. Waking the lady, the two identify her as a human, which takes Soray completely by surprise as he's only ever lived with Seraphim his entire life. Soray introduces himself to the woman, however she is unable to see Mikleo due to most humans being unable to perceive Seraphim. Thus the woman finds it strange that Soray appears to be talking to thin air. Despite not giving her name, Soray offers to take the woman back to his village. This concerns Mikleo, who reminds Soray that Gramps, the village chief, does not allow humans into his village. Soray reminds Mikleo that he is a human too, and together the three escape the ruins and return to the village. At the village, Soray tries to introduce the other Seraphim to the woman, but again, to her it just looks like Soray is going crazy. Soray then takes the woman to his house, while he goes off to Gramps' house. At Gramps' house, Soray is scolded by Gramps for bringing humans into the town, and tells Soray that the woman needs to leave as soon as possible. Soray reluctantly agrees and goes back to his home to chat with the woman. That night, Soray and the woman hang out and discuss the world around them, to which Soray learns that the woman also has read the Celestial Records, and one day dreams of meeting Seraphim herself. The next day, Soray leads the woman to the village gate along with the Seraphim to see her off. Just before she leaves, the woman reveals that her name is Alicia and she apologises for not telling Soray her name sooner. Soray bids Alicia farewell, and with that the two part ways. Only a few moments later, Gramps detects that an intruder has entered the village. The villagers split up to find the intruder, with Soray and Mikleo travelling as a team. The two of them suddenly come across a humanoid beast called Lunaire, who is eating one of the other villagers. The two try to fight the monster but find themselves on the back foot. Suddenly Gramps shows up, to which Lunaire flees while stating that his prey is getting away. Soray and Mikleo suspect that Lunaire is referring to Alicia, thus Soray decides to leave the village to warn Alicia about the monster. Mikleo decides to join Soray, and together the two leave the village to discover the world below. Heading into the world of humans, the two track Alicia to the city of Lady Lake in the Kingdom of Highland. There the two run into a friendly merchant by the name of Rose who helps the two get into town. In Lady Lake, the duo discover that Lunaire is already there and is working with a group of assassins. Worried that Alicia is in even more danger than before, the two try to desperately reach her. However, they soon find Alicia is overseeing a ceremony in the cathedral, to which Soray and Mikleo can't enter. Luckily, Rose shows up and again helps the two bribe their way into the cathedral. Inside, the two find Alicia overseeing the Sacred Blade Festival, in which members of the public try their luck at pulling out the Sacred Blade of the altar in the middle of the church. Soray and Mikleo soon notices Seraphim by the blade and figures that she is the one that gives power to the blade. Suddenly a riot breaks out in the audience, to which the guards respond with violence. In the chaos, one of the humans turns into a monster called a Hellion due to the high amount of malevolence in the air. Hoping to solve the escalating crisis, Soray asks the Lady of the Blade, whose name is Lila, if he can pull the sword out, to which, after warning him about the burden he'll be taking on, allows him to draw the blade. By drawing the blade, Soray is then able to harness the power of Lila to fight the Hellions and purge the room of malevolence. In pulling the sword out of the stone, Soray has now proclaimed himself as the new shepherd. As a shepherd, Soray is now tasked with journeying across the lands and purging the world of Hellions, along with the malevolence that creates them. And the story continues from there, in which Soray teams up with other human and Seraphim on his quest to purify the world. For the full story breakdown, you can always check out the cutscenes on YouTube, or just play the game yourself. Despite being made for the PlayStation 3, Tales of Zestiria definitely improves on the visuals seen in Tales of Xillia. For a start, Zestiria removes that horrible desaturation filter that made the Xillia games look super hazy. It also has a much improved physics engine which makes loose items of clothing blow much more realistically in the wind. Most importantly of all the changes is the improved detail in the character and world designs. These changes are given even more pronunciation via the PS4 version of the game, which is now able to display the game in a much more sharper resolution of 1080p in comparison to the PS3's 720p. Alongside the improvements to the visuals, the developers have also tried to improve other areas of the presentation, such as the maps, which are now huge. While I actually found these large maps a bit too large, I soon realised that they were basically the same size as the areas in the Xillia games, with the only difference being Xillia splitting them up into 3 or so separate areas. The Zestiria allows for much more seamless travel as there are now way less load screens. While these maps are still kind of bare like Xillia, Zestiria does bring back the discoverable landmarks from races, alongside full-body skits which play when you discover these landmarks. Alongside landmarks, you also can find special monoliths which give you useful game tips, as well as the returning turtles, who will help you out by selling you additional maps of the region. For the first time in the series, other party members will now travel alongside your lead character as you explore the world. Unfortunately, in order to cut down on animations, the developed team has made the Seraphim characters travel inside Saray to just leave the human players to journey around the world with you. Despite this unfortunate cutback, Saray is able to talk with his human companions to discuss the current state of things as well as get hints at what to do next, which is a nice touch to the game. Along with chatting with other party members, Saray is also able to perform on-map actions using the power of his Seraphim companions. This includes setting objects on fire, teleporting across gaps, hiding from enemy view, and smashing large boulders. Saray is also additionally able to use his sword to cut away foliage. Since these actions require Saray's own skills, you are unfortunately locked to playing exclusively as Saray. This makes Zestiria the first mainline game since Tales of Destiny on the PS1 to not allow you to play as any other character in the overworld. Speaking about the other characters, the series is a somewhat interesting cast. In total, there are 8 playable characters. However, you'll never have more than 6 playable at any one time, as characters will leave and join the party. Alongside the aforementioned characters of Saray, Mikleo, Alicia and Lila, we're also joined by the Seraphim Edna, Dezel and the much later Zavid. We're also joined by Rose, which brings us to arguably Zestiria's most controversial decision. You see, in most promotional material surrounding Zestiria's launch, Alicia was shown to be the game's primary heroine. Thus it comes as quite a surprise when she leaves the party only a few hours in and is replaced by Rose, who is nowhere near as promoted. This bait and switch was made even worse when Bandai Namco announced an Alicia's side story DLC, with many accusing the developers of cutting Alicia out of the story to sell her as additional DLC. Personally, I don't particularly like the switch, as I found Alicia a much more interesting character than Rose, and to have Alicia just disappear from the plot for a large section of the story just feels wrong, and I wish they had instead worked her into the plot alongside Rose, or kept Rose as a side character. Getting away from the Alicia controversy, we need to talk about support talents. As you explore the Glenwood continent, you can set the party members to apply special bonuses to your team, such as faster movement, treasure chest detection or food preparation. Each character has a unique selection of support skills, of which one can be activated at a time. The activated skill will get stronger the longer it is left active, thus increasing their effectiveness. Support skills aren't the only bonus your party can get. As you purge the world of Malevolence, you'll find and gain the support of powerful Seraphim known as the Lord of the Lands. Each Lord of the Land will preside over a town and give the player bonuses while they're in that town or the surrounding regions, such as health regeneration and increased item drop rate from Hellions. The Lord of the Land powers can also be strengthened by the power of Normans. These 50 bear-like creatures can be found across the land and each correspond to one of the game's 50 equipment skills. When equipped to a Lord of the Land, Norman will cause the equipment dropped in that region to have said equipment skill. This becomes important as Zestiria has quite the unique skill system. Unlike previous games, each of Zestiria's 50 skills are categorized into 1 of 10 categories and 1 of 5 elements. These skills can then be stacked to yield additional bonuses, such as having 1 skill of every element in a select category. While the skill synergy is a really cool idea, the sheer number of skills and combinations can be quite overwhelming to a lot of players who are probably already trying to get their heads around the battle system. For combat, we now have the Fusionic Chain Linear Motion battle system. Now arguably the biggest new thing is how battles now occur in the field maps as opposed to separate battle arenas. While this is kind of a cool idea from a presentation perspective, it really doesn't work on a practical level, with it mostly being a hindrance, especially when fighting up against a wall with the camera getting put into very weird angles to accommodate. As for the combat itself, we have a lot of systems taken from Tales of Grace's style shift linear motion battle system. Much like Grace's, we have a front-facing camera along with the controls associated with said camera angle. Like in Grace's, we don't have any TP limiting our arts. However, rather than using Grace's CC system, we instead see the return of the Spirit Gauge from Tales of Destiny 2 in the form of the Spirit Chain. Just like in Destiny 2, rather than being able to attack until the SC gauge is depleted, you are limited to the number of attacks you can make in any one combo, with initially being 4 attacks, although this can change as we'll see later. Tales of Zestiria doesn't only take cues from Tales of Destiny 2 with its Spirit Chain, as the gauge also works like Tales of Rebirth's Rush Gauge. When the gauge is close to 100%, your character will enjoy greater defense, protection from status ailments, and faster SC recovery. Meanwhile, the closer to 0 your characters are, will result in ever-increasing damage numbers. When attacking, you have the choice between 3 types of arts. Pressing X, characters will be able to perform martial arts off a Grace's style art tree. These martial arts tend to be quick yet weak, however they are useful at interrupting casting enemies. Meanwhile, pressing circle with a human character will unleash hidden arts. These arts tend to be slower but pack a greater punch. They unfortunately, however, will not stop an enemy from casting a spell. Finally, by pressing circle using a Seraphim character will unleash a Seraphic Art, which is this game's version of spells. Like in Graces, the later a spell is cast in the combo, the quicker the spell is cast. One interesting thing to note about hidden and seraphic arts is the fact that you are able to assign them to all 4 directions of the control stick as well as the neutral position. This is the only time we've ever been able to utilise all 5 inputs on the control stick at once. As I said earlier, you can only initially perform a 4-hit attack. However, each of the party members now has access to the blast gauge indicated by the number on their portrait. This gauge fills up over time but can also be greatly raised by performing actions such as avoiding attacks. When BG is above 1, characters are able to expend 1 BG mid-combo in order to unleash an attack which resets the combo as well as regains SC. Meanwhile, characters can also expend 3 BG to unleash a Mystic Art. Blast points are also used for this game's unique mechanic of armatization. When setting up your battle party, you will at all times be locked to a party of 2 human and 2 Seraphim partners. Since Seraphim need a human to partner with, anytime you are playing with just Saray as the only human in the party, you are locked to a party of 2 regardless of how many Seraphim are in your party. This is kind of annoying. When in battle, the player can switch which Seraphim they are paired up with, either from the bench or from the other human character. And any time, if the player character has at least 1 BG, they can go Super Saiyan, armatize with their partnered Seraphim. In this form, the two will merge into a powerful singular fighter. This new fighter now performs hidden arts via X and seraphic arts via circle, but can only make 3-hit combos. They also have the ability to expend 1 BG to perform a powerful attack or healing spell. After the Xillia protagonists spiced up the formula, Saray returns back to the classic Tales swordsman, with a series of fast sword martial arts along with some slow and more powerful hidden arts. Rose meanwhile uses 2 daggers, but besides having a different set of martial and hidden arts, doesn't really differ much in the playstyle from Saray. The same goes for Alicia too, with the big exception that she can't armatize, thus making fans even more angry at the developers for shafting her. While the humans play relatively similar to one another, the Seraphim have a few more unique playstyles. Miglio uses a staff as a weapon and can shoot ice beams. When armatized, he gives the human player a bow to use in long-range attacks. Lila uses paper charms which she infuses with magic to perform close-range power attacks. When armatized, Lila gives the human a giant sword to swing around. Edna joins the class of obscure weapon fighters, with her using an umbrella for combat. When armatized, Edna gives the human player a giant set of stone fists to use in combat. Desdal and Zavid both play identical to one another, using a pendulum to attack at range. Meanwhile, when armatized, the two give the human a set of metal wings which can be used to blast powerful wind attacks into enemies. As you get to know the combat system, spare a bit of time to check out the battle skills. These skills are slowly unlocked throughout the game and can be activated at the cost of AP, found by completing game tasks such as discovering monoliths. Battle skills can really change how one approaches combat, with it allowing the party to use additional skills. In general, the Fusionic Chain linear motion battle system is a pretty nifty combat system that does a lot of things that I found pretty neat, just like the soundtrack. For Tales of Zestiria's soundtrack, Motoi Sakuraba returns once again to the composing role. However, this time he'll be joined by none other than Go Shiina, who returns to the Tales franchise after previously composing the soundtrack to Tales of Legendia. While initially being quite the novice composer back in 2005, by 2015 Shiina had really built a name for himself in Bandai Namco, having previously composed the soundtrack to the first 2 God Eater games along with a bunch of other titles. In fact, Shiina and Sakuraba had previously collaborated with each other on some of the Tales spin-off titles. Sakuraba for the most part would handle the bulk of the soundtrack, including most of the game's battle themes. Meanwhile, Shiina would develop a handful of specialty tracks such as the themes of Alicia and Zavid, as well as the Trial Dungeon themes. Much like with Legendia, Shiina once again struggled to fit his compositions with those of Sakuraba, resulting in his tracks kinda sticking out. Basically, whenever the game's score sounds like God Eater music, you know you listen to one of Shiina's tracks. While Shiina's music does stick out a bit, it's by no means bad. In fact, Shiina returned to the franchise as a welcome return, and his work does a great job to give Zestiria a unique sounding score. Much like with the previous games, Zestiria once again has another solid voice cast. This time the team went with a more light-hearted cast in comparison to the more serious casts seen in the Xillia games, but in general they do a pretty good job. While Saray might be a bit of a goody two-shoes, the story does a pretty decent job in challenging Saray by demonstrating the moral greyness of the world and the tough decisions one needs to make. To be honest, it's really hard for me to find one specific character who I really like the voice work of, as they all do a pretty solid job. As for the game's opening, we have J-pop group Superfly performing the song White Light, which is another one of those Tales opening songs which has grown on me over time. I wasn't initially a huge fan of the slow rock beat, however I now really appreciate the power of this slow march tempo, especially the chorus. While I have grown to like the song, what baffles me is the decision to remove the vocal track. After every Tales game since Zestiria gave us the complete opening song with lyrics, Zestiria returns to the Abyss format of replacing the vocal track with the solo guitar. Thankfully, this would be the last game to mess with the opening song. As for the game's opening cinematic, Ufotable returns and once again delivers us another awesome opening cinematic. Despite like Xillia 2 also having quite a large cast, Zestiria's opening is much better able to introduce the characters of the game, while at the same time having some pretty awesome action shots. While nothing's likely ever going to top the original Xillia opening for me, this is definitely one of the series' better openings. You know, I went into this game with the expectation that I was gonna hate it. After all the negative reviews of this game, I was ready to put this game alongside the likes of Tales of the Tempest and Dawn of the New World. However, I really enjoyed my time playing Tales of Zestiria. From a visual standpoint, Zestiria very much cleans up the visual flaws brought forward by the new Xillia art style, and the new locations and character models look really good. I also find it kinda strange how much I like Saray. For the most part, he's kind of a Gary Stew, having no moral flaws and instead just being your regular goofy JRPG protagonist. However, I really enjoyed his journey to purify the world, and I think a lot of that comes down to a really well written main plot. With the series going ever more into darker and grittier stories, Zestiria's plot truly is a throwback to the classic era of Tales games. On the gameplay side of things, the Fusion Exchange linear motion battle system does a decent job in creating a new Graces style combat system. While I still think Graces has the better battle system, I still find a lot of enjoyment in trying to optimise when I use my blast gauge to maximise the damage of my combos. In fact, my enjoyment of this game's battle system has been made even more prevalent knowing what the battle systems are like in the next Tales games. However, Zestiria is a game with many problems. Not game-breaking problems like I initially thought, but problems nonetheless that do hinder the game's overall experience. Staying on the topic of the battle system, having battles occur in the field maps was definitely a mistake. Not only are the field maps unnecessarily huge to allow for the battles to fit in them, but the terrain still causes issues in combat with enemies being behind rocks and the camera getting stuck in walls. Even ignoring the battle map, I also have the issue with the party layout and how it forces you to always have Saray and Rose in your party. I also like to play with everybody in my party in a Tales game. However, with the game being built around switching Seraphim allies to counter the monsters being fought, I found it very hard to play as any one Seraphim without having to awkwardly switch to another character only a few seconds into combat. Now let's talk about arguably the game's biggest flaw in the Alicia controversy. While I don't think Tales producer Hideo Baba should have resigned over this controversy, it was still a pretty poor decision. With Alicia being introduced well before Rose, I grew quite attached to her as the main heroine, and to see her basically be relegated to an early game guest character is just not good. While I think Rose is a well written character, it's hard to watch any scene with her in it and not feel like she's stealing a moment that Alicia should have been in. I just wish the development team had found a way to have both ladies in your party and avoid this whole controversy. To finally finish up on this controversy, I want to talk about the aftermath. Following negative fan feedback, Tales producer Hideo Baba would leave Bandai Namco and begin a job with Square Enix, which would also fall through a few years later, leaving Baba kind of all out at sea, and we haven't really heard much from him since. Since the Tales of Destiny PS2 retrospective, I've had the honour of following Baba's career through my retrospectives on Hearts, Graces and the Xillia games. In my research on these games, I've really appreciated Baba's openness to talk with fans about the work the Tales team gets up to. In Baba, Tales truly had a great spokesperson who really kept the series alive even after Namco terminated the Namco Tales studio in 2012. In some respects, I think the current poor state of the Tales franchise is due in part to the team lacking a passionate figure like Baba who can get new games developed instead of the soulless corporate tie-in crap we keep getting. While we can theorise what Tales might have been like if Baba had stayed on, we need to get back to reality and look towards our next Tales game. For this next Tales game, Bandai Namco looked to appease the fans who had been frustrated with Zestiria's choices with a new prequel story that looked to take a drastic new approach to the Tales formula. So come back next time we look at 2016's Tales of Zestiria for the PlayStation 4.